3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Dave the Dog Trainer Podcast, episode 302.
302?
202.
Woo!
I just said 202 a second ago, and then I said 302.
Yeah, I was like, we just skipped. We went in multiverse.
Yeah, another century.
Yeah.
Skipped another
Oh,
century.
yeah, that's what we called it last week. Yesterday. I almost said yesterday. Jesus. We're all kinds of messed up today, I think.
Yeah. What's good?
Another day, another dollar, my friend.
Another day, another dollar. It's true.
Yeah. Respectable dollars.
Respectable dollars.
Not Wes Watson dollars.
All just out here trying to earn that respectable dollar.
That's right.
I like it.
How about you?
You know, staying busy. Staying busy.
What the?
What do you got there?
Look, it's like cracked.
Is that supposed to screw off?
I don't know.
Nope.
Jeez.
Might need a new water bottle.
I think so. Man. Okay, sorry.
It's all good. Okay. Topic of today. Remember one time when we did an episode where we said, I think we titled the episode, or the big premise of the episode was like, e-collars are a good tool when used properly. Remember that one?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Or like
one.
the premise of it was like, we're implying that the tool can be a bad tool when used improperly, when in actuality, it's not the tool that defines whether or not it's being used, right?
Yeah.
Good or bad. It's just the application of it, and like that should have no impact on whether we ever call the tool good or bad, right?
Yeah.
We can call an application of methods good or bad, but not an individual tool, right?
Yeah.
So I was watching or reading comments on one of our newer YouTube videos that we put out recently. It was working with this like little reactive, like, I don't even know what he is, like a Boston Terrier Puggle mix thing, right?
Okay.
I don't know if we talked about this dog on the podcast.
I don't think so.
Okay, so this dog, in a nutshell, this dog did, I think it was something along the lines of, don't hold me to these exact numbers, but something along the lines of like 15 to 20 one-on-one sessions with another trainer, and then like 10 to 15 group classes with another trainer.
Jeez,
right?
okay.
For dog aggression and reactivity issues.
Ew.
And, you know, you're talking like 30 plus hours of coaching, right? This dog and client has had by this competitor.
Yeah.
And the dog still is hyper reactive to other dogs and cannot socialize with other dogs.
Perfect.
Right? So awesome. Really great job, guys.
Yeah. 30 hours well spent.
30 hours of time well spent, and mucho dollars probably very well spent too, right? So did one session with this dog. The video is, I don't know what's going on here. It's like not letting me open Safari. Oh, you know what it is? Is it still? It might still be over to the other side. Here, I'll look it up on my phone.
Oh,
I'll give you guys the exact title of this video in a second here. That way you can go reference back to it. It was a really good video, though. So this video was, so the video is called Aggressive or Under-Socialized, Full Assessment with Very Reactive Dog, right? Posted it 2 weeks ago. And the video details, this individual purchased a single hour session, right? And basically I split it up into 2 sessions for them because I wanted to see both how the dog was socially with other dogs, and I wanted to see how the dog was out in like a public context where it would see other dogs and be like reactive, right? Because we always separate reactivity and aggression issues as 2 separate things, right? 99% of reactive dogs we see are not aggressive towards other dogs, and 99% of aggressive dogs that we work with are not reactive to other dogs on a leash. Like they're really 2 independent concepts, and I try to push on people all the time to keep those things separately, right? Whatever. So in the video, basically what we do is we break down how we socialize the dog with other dogs. Turns out this dog is not aggressive towards other dogs. The dog is definitely under-socialized and very scared of other dogs, but like at a worst, this dog would get like backed into a corner by another dog and then kind of like growl and like snap at the dog a couple times or something. Nothing crazy. Just needs some socialization, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But when we went out with the dog in a public setting, we obviously saw the dog was very reactive to other dogs, right? So basically where I'm going with this is X tools are good when used properly or bad when used properly. I'm going to sandwich another tool into this, which is, and I don't know if we've done a full episode on this or not, but if we haven't, today's going to be the one. The Flexi lead, right?
Oh, okay.
This comment that I got from somebody kind of sparked this. I saw this morning. It was on a reel from this video, right?
Okay.
And they said, hate flexi leashes as a professional balanced dog trainer and having to deal with elderly folk who can barely hold a leash in the first place, have yapping little dogs and usually are on a harness, but I love the way you taught this. Thanks. Right? So that comment just immediately sparked in my mind that whole conversation of like when people comment on videos and say, "Oh, this look at the joys of an e-collar when used properly," right? Because I thought the same thing to myself, and I think I replied back to this comment and I said, "The Flexi is a tool I have completely transformed my position on over the years. I think it is one of the best tools that we have at our disposal currently." Right? And I'll tell you, man, over the last, we'll just say 2 years, do I genuinely feel like that. I genuinely feel like it is one of the greatest tools that we have at our disposal currently for dog training. And I'll kind of detail a couple of places where I've really leaned into using the Flexi lead and why I think it's been such a beneficial tool. Yeah. Right?
I would like to start this off too, because I know there's videos that we made back in the day, like 2018, 2019, where we were just
roasting it. Just absolutely roasting it.
Yeah, so your position was very against.
And listen, that a part of that was like just the, when you get into dog training and there are certain beliefs that are held at the time. Look at me, I'm doing this. There are certain beliefs that are held.
You've been watching The Sopranos again, haven't you?
Sopranos a little too much, right? There are certain beliefs that are held that just like, when you get into dog training, it's what everybody says. So you just kind of adopt those and you don't really question them a whole lot initially until you run into enough circumstances that make you question it, right? We'll do a whole episode on that one day too, of different beliefs that I had initially getting into dog training that like I had to learn through that were just not good, right?
Yeah, all right.
So whatever. So the Flexi lead's one of them. Obviously, most people shit on the Flexi lead for the reasons of, people get a Flexi and just let their dog do whatever the hell they want to do, but they have no control over the dog to reel them back in. So the dog's getting tangled up all over stuff. They're using improper Flexis that are not rated at a high enough strength to contain the dog that they currently have. You see injuries of people getting wrapped around their legs with it and then rope burns and stuff. All of those are just a result of using the tool improperly. But I was using the philosophy that people use with the e-collar, which is like, oh, well, because people are using them wrong, that means it's a bad tool, right? Which is just not the case.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously, in this dog's case that we did the assessment with, it was the greatest tool in the world for helping this owner to overcome some really, really big hurdles that she was struggling with. So with reactivity, you guys hear me talk a lot about like people nagging their dog too much, being too quick on correcting their dog for things or too late on correcting their dog for things, or never being able to kind of see the line in which they want to kind of give their corrections to hold their dog accountable for things, where the Flexi lead helped to immediately break her of the habit of holding her leash too short. It helped her break the habit of constantly pulling on the leash instead of using the e-collar, because obviously when you have that Flexi on, you could pull back all day long and it's obviously not going to do anything, right? It helped her to be able to allow the dog to make full committed decisions. Like a lot of times when people are walking their dog on, like, let's say a 4 to 6 foot leash, even if you're holding virtually the very end of that leash, if you have a larger dog, let's say you have a dog that's like 4 foot long, right? And you're on a 6 foot leash with them.
Yeah.
By the time they hit the end of the leash, because of how long they are, they really are only maybe a foot or so away from you. And they, in their mind, maybe haven't even committed to leaving your side yet, right? So you wind up correcting way too preemptively for a lot of things, which creates a lot of confusion and stuff. So with this dog in particular, we put the dog on a Flexi because she was holding her leash too short and she was having a hard time understanding where she needed to give her correction with things, right? So because of that, my computer's glitching on me here. That's okay. All right, we're good.
Yeah.
So we put the dog on a flexi, and I was able to tell her, okay, now take your dog for a walk and wait till the dog truly leaves you, right? This dog can get now 25 feet away from you at this point. Wait till the dog commits to leaving you, which in this dog's case, he was able to go from being right next to her to like 10 feet away from her very, very quickly. And when he got the correction for being that much further away from her, he was able to retain that, when he looked back, he's like, I'm definitely away from mom at this point. Where a lot of times on that 6-foot leash, again, they're 2 feet away from you. You give that correction, they look back, they're like, what do you mean? I'm right next to you. What am I getting corrected for? They're not able to process that correction and learn how to avoid it moving forward, right? So we were able to do that, obviously. Every time when she instinctually tried to just pull back on the leash, again, she wasn't able to do it. And we were able to just see so many more mistakes that we were not able to see before, right? So great tool for being able to kind of work through some of those types of issues with reactive dogs. Great tool for transitioning to off-leash training in places where you may not have enough space for the dog to safely get really far away from you. Let me kind of elaborate on what I mean by that, right? A lot of people will use a traditional long line as the gap between working a dog on a short leash and working a dog fully off leash. And though there are still some places where a long line is really, really essential, a flexi can be a far superior tool to that if you're in a place where you can't really let the dog get 20 feet away from you, or, there's a risk that the dog might kind of try to run into the street or things like that. Because let's say I'm walking down a busy road and I have the dog on a flexi and I'm trying to work on the dog like lagging too far behind. Let's say I've taught the dog to stay behind me, but every time I walk, the dog will sometimes just stop walking or get, 10 feet behind me, 15 feet behind me. If I were on a traditional long line, that would give the dog a true 10-foot like radius that they can get around you at that point. Right? Yeah. They have a lot more leash to kind of work with at that point. Where with the flexi, as I'm walking, if the dog does anything other than veer just behind me and they try to go off to the side, then at that point, I have the ability to just lock it right there and then to keep the dog safe if they were to make a mistake, like, like I said, approach another dog or kind of try to run towards a street or things like that, right? So I've got a little bit more flexibility for things like that, where at this point with our board and trains, when I take them for walks, 99% of the time, I just keep them on a flexi lead because I'm able to right out the gate work on essentially off-leash healing that's not contingent on a short leash keeping them towards me, right? So that's a great place that I use it a lot with dogs. Another dog recently that I used one with that I thought it was just an absolutely essential tool. There's this dog, Finn, that I was working with that was just stupidly reactive on a leash. There's a couple of YouTube videos that we made of him. And I knew going back to his home environment, like we got his leash walking looking really good, but I knew that his owner was going to need to take the walking in 2 phases, right? Yeah. I knew if I was to go home and say basically, hey, go for your walks, and I know your dog used to be crazy reactive in these environments, but I want you to work this like heel position and focus on the reactivity and keep the dog kind of really contained and bottled up next to you and stuff. I knew it was just going to be a disaster. They'd be fighting the dog all the time, et cetera, et cetera. So I chose, because they lived in a more quiet suburban area, I chose to have them start walking the dog on a flexi and exclusively address either pulling on the end of the leash or reacting at things, but to give the dog more freedom to explore and sniff around. And basically, instead of giving this expectation of what we wanted him to do, which was maintain like a heel position, I wanted to make sure that he could have freedom and have a bit of an outlet because he doesn't have like a fenced area that he could run in or anything like that. But we could teach him how to make better decisions on the walk and just not react at the cars that were driving by or react at the people walking by or the dogs walking by, et cetera, et cetera. And I had them do that for the whole first week that he was home. And like literally they were able to address all of the reactivity plus provide a really good outlet for them. Yeah. So when we go to do our first follow-up session, we're going to be able to now work the healing and not be fighting this urge for the dog to want to be reacting every time he sees a trigger because we already addressed that problem. So we can focus just on the compliance of the obedience exercise, and it's going to be 10 times easier for him to be successful then at that point. Yeah. Right? So it's just like there's an infinite amount of places where we're able to use it, but in a nutshell, it's the premise of giving the dog more freedom, but still having the ability to maintain strict control with things. That's kind of the overall premise of why I really have enjoyed the tool lately with dogs. So.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, It's funny because overall it became such it's like a versatile tool that you can use in many different ways, many different problem areas, I guess. And the at the very beginning, like I never really thought about, like the 4-foot dog, and you only have like 2 feet.
Yeah.
And like the dog may not even think that it's even away from you yet. I never really like thought about that in that way.
I think that's one of the biggest things that for the longest time really separated our leash walking from a lot of other places. And still to this day, I think is a big differentiation, whatever it is, right? Between how we train it versus how a lot of people train it. Why we're able to have so much success is so many people get caught on nitpicking position, right? I talk a lot about heel, like, where's the line where the dog really understands what they're getting corrected for? Like, do you really think the dog understands shoulder in line versus shoulder 3 inches in front of the leg versus shoulder, a foot in front of the leg, et cetera, et cetera? Or do you feel like the dog is only staying with you due to an understanding that they need to maintain attention? I think it's the latter. I think it's less about them knowing this like concrete position that you could nitpick and nag like that. And I think that the heel position is truly derived from the dog keeping attention on you. And I can even go as far as saying that I think even in sport context, when you're training something like a focused heel, the dog is not really understanding this exact positioning next to you, right? And just look at like, when you see really competitive IGP dogs or Mondio ring dogs that are doing focused healing, and you'll notice all of them walk a little bit different with their owners, right? A lot of them will kind of crab in front. A lot of them will kind of stay a little bit further back. A lot of them will have center of their body in line with the leg, right? They all do it slightly different. And yes, you could use like your reward placement, right? Like if the dog's crabbing a lot, you could reward a little bit more out to the side. If the dog's lagging behind too much, you could reward a little bit more up front. If the dog's foraging too far ahead, you could reward more behind a little bit. And the dog will tend to stay more in one direction or the other in anticipation of that reward coming. But even a focused heel is trained solely off of the dog just organically keeping attention on you and understanding the need to be in this vicinity. Right. But everything else, I don't think they understand the nuanced, like I said, couple inches ahead, couple inches behind. I think we wind up teaching the dog to accidentally wind up where we want them to be and just pattern that in just through reward placement. Right. Yeah. So if you look at it from the context of training the heel position, not in a competitive purpose, but for just, day-to-day obedience training and day-to-day walking skills and stuff like that, and you're using something like aversives to train it, which we know when we're training using escape and avoidance versus like something like positive reinforcement initially, you're going to get a little bit more of kind of a, I don't know, it sounds bad, but like a panic response out of the dog, right? Like when they want to avoid something unpleasant, they're going to almost kind of panic into position initially as they're learning it. For sure. And if they can't figure out, like with positive reinforcement, if the dog doesn't know how to access the positive reinforcement, like they're just going to try harder to do the right thing, right? Where if they can't figure out how to escape the punishment, right, or escape the negative reinforcement in that case, you're going to see them just become frantic and anxious then at that point, right? So like a lot of people talk about like the potential fallouts of using aversive training. Like, yeah, if the dog can't figure out how to win the game with positive reinforcement, you don't run a lot of like side effects with that, aside from the dog just like offering a lot of different behaviors and kind of stressing of like, oh my God, how do I get this reward, right? Yeah. Where if they can't figure out how to win the game of avoiding or escaping aversives, you will start to see a lot of stress and anxiety come out of the dog then at that point, which will display itself in more frantic behavior. So what I'm getting at with this is, if you're nitpicking your heel position and you're trying to focus on this like really precise position that the dog can't intentionally figure out exactly how to do, you're never going to get anywhere with it, right? You're going to mess up your walk more than anything. You're going to create a lot of stress and frustration. You may make your reactivity issues worse because you're creating more stress and frustration on the walk. So let's make sure that we focus on the right thing here. And instead of focusing on a concrete position, focus on the dog just being with you. Yeah. Right. And back to your initial point here, right? If the dog still feels like they're with you when they're getting the correction, whether you think they're with you or not, you will never achieve anything.
Yeah.
Right? You will never teach them how to avoid that correction moving forward, and you'll run into all those side effects we just talked about. So let's make it really fucking clear when we give that correction that the dog is not with us anymore.
Yeah.
And the Flexi lead allows us to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I will even go as far as like when I'm walking a dog, if I feel like they're getting a little ahead, I'll wait until that moment, even if they're 5 feet ahead of me, 6 feet ahead of me at this point. I'll wait for that moment where instead of them just being like, getting ahead, I'll wait until they just go, right? Like you'll see that moment where they're like inching forward and like, is this okay? To like, I'm going to that tree, right? Or I'm going towards that person, or I'm going to sniff that wall over there, right? I'll wait for that and I'll give my correction right there and then, and I'll give a much more firm correction for that. And 100% of the time when I'm working with dogs, when I do that, every one of them goes, oh, yeah, I know exactly what that was for.
Yeah.
And then I get them to come back to me, and then I repeat that process.
Yeah.
Right? And after a couple times of doing that, with most of these dogs, you literally only need to correct a few times for that, and like, they just get it.
Yeah.
They get it, and then they start doing what we want them to in the first place, and they start offering this heel position.
Yeah.
Right? I tell everybody, again, the heel is not derived from me training this precise position.
Yeah.
It's derived from me making sure the dog has really good attention on me. Right?
Yeah.
And everybody gets confused. Even when I do like seminars and stuff, like when I was up in Toronto training that seminar last year, everybody asked me, they're like, oh, well, like, so you just train. So this is what it would turn into. Everybody go, oh, so you're just training a loose leash walk. I'm like, no. It's not a loose leash walk. It's not a loose leash walk because I want the dog to do the same thing that you want the dog to do. I'm just saying that there's a different way you can go about achieving it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to nag the position. You could address the complete lack of focus on you, the complete lack of being with you, and the dog will organically do that. No different than you shape it with your reward placement, right? The training of the focused heel doesn't come from me rewarding these precise little motions. It comes from me changing in the dog's mind where that reward is going to come from so they organically put themselves where I want them to be.
Yeah.
Right? But again, I'm arguing that I don't think they're even consciously understanding as precise of a picture as you think that they're understanding.
Yeah.
It's more happening on accident due to what's going on in the environment around them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's also like, it sounds like it's a good way to like transition to like off leash training.
Well, for sure, right? Because with the Flexi Lead, the goal is when I have clients start working with it, is I want you to be able to do your whole session without ever needing to lock the leash.
Yeah.
Because if you can go your whole session without needing to lock the leash, like the Flexi I use, which by the way, guys, Flexi Giant. They got like a small, medium, large, extra large one. The Flexi Giant is the highest rated Flexi on the market. It has the strongest cord, the strongest mechanisms and stuff. It will not break on you. It's sturdy. It's great. It's the only one that I'll use, right?
I'm glad. I was going to ask you about that.
Flexi Giant.
Flexi Giant.
Right? I use exclusively the large and the extra large. The large is perfect for any size dog, aside from like maybe a huge Mastiff or Great Dane or something. Yeah. The XL is good for like any dog out there, right?
Okay.
But yeah, if you could go your entire training session in a busy public field without ever needing to lock the leash, that lets me know that your verbal commands you're using and your e-collar corrections you're using, your timing is perfect. You're able to communicate with the dog without the need of the leash, which then again allows you to then transition to fully off leash. And again, the benefit that it has over something like the long line is that you still have the control where in an emergency setting, you could lock it when it's shorter, where like, let's say I'm walking and I'm practicing off leash heeling and I have my dog on a 20-foot long line and I'm holding the end of it, right? And we're walking by a person. If the dog decided to try to lunge towards the person, I can't reel that leash in fast enough.
Yeah.
Where with the Flexi, I can, because it's gonna match the dog.
Yep.
Right? It's since the dog is right next to me, it's only this long at that point. So if I lock it, I could do that easily.
Yeah.
And everybody gives me then shit though, is like, oh well, but there's a little tension on the Flexi. Right?
Oh,
guys, I really genuinely do not think that there's much more tension on the Flexi than there is on just a long line dragging off of their collar.
Right.
It's pretty fucking close. There's a fucking hint of tension there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's much where it affects.
It's negligible.
It's negligible at that point. right? And I teach the dog to ignore that tension also, even if it did cause an issue. Like when I'm working sit stays and stuff, like I'll literally put a dog in a sit and walk to the end of the flexi and back, and like there's tension the whole time that's technically pulling the dog towards me, and they learn to ignore that then at that point. So
Yeah.
I mean, one way or another, like you can only do so much to truly prep them for off leash before you go to take that leash off.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very negligible at that point. The absolute only benefit that I think that a traditional long line has over something like a flexi is two things. One, if I need to lock the leash, there is a slight awkward, like jarring click, right? And then when I go to unlock it, it quickly reapplies that tension. Like let's say I lock it and then it gets some slack in the leash and then I unlock it, it kind of pulls that leash back in tight pretty quickly, and the momentum of it can add a little bit more tension on the leash than you want. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a downside to it. A benefit of the long line over the flexi is that if I'm working if I need to work leash pressure, it's a little easier with a long line to like add and subtract pressure in like a gradual incremental way. Like if I'm doing some leash pressure and need to like gradually increase it, it's easier to do on the long line as opposed to with the big handle of the flexi. Another one, you are limited to the 25 feet of the Flexi Giant that I have, right?
Yeah.
And you can't have a dog drag a flexi lead because the mechanism itself is just far too heavy, obviously. Where with a long line, if I am working on now giving the dog a ton of freedom off leash, and I want to allow the dog to get 50 feet away from me, 60 feet away from me, but I still want them to have that line on as something I could step on if I need to or grab if I need to, I could do that with a long line, and I cannot do that with a flexi, right?
It's true.
So honestly, your best stepping stones you would have would be like minimum 6 foot leash, 6 to 8 foot leash initially as you're training the dog, I would say, right? I used to have, I think I still have it probably in my car, like an 8 foot line that I used to use. I think we bought them initially as like agitation lines for when we were doing bite work. And that leash fucking rules. It's like a nice thin one, and it's 8 foot. It doesn't have a handle on the end of it. And it's great. It's a great line. Whatever. 6 to 8 foot leash initially as you're training the dog. Transition to flexi lead then at that point. Transition from there to dragged 20 to 25 foot long line when you're giving the dog tons of freedom, then to off leash fully at that point. That would be my ideal
stepping
stones through leashes, I would say.
That makes sense. Okay, so since you had such a stance on flexis, what was the this isn't a bad tool?
You know, I just started seeing more people using them. I started seeing other trainers kind of changing their stance on it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy one and give it a go.
Yeah. That was it, huh?
That was it.
Wow.
Bought one, started using it. And then I just started kind of seeing places where I was like, man, that's actually a pretty cool place I could use it in. That's a pretty cool place I could use it in. And the very first thing I ever used it for is, I'm telling you guys, like when you're working with clients and you're trying to break the habit of them pulling on the leash, it's so hard because it's so subconscious in their mind. Right?
Yeah.
Again, I did it a million times. Like you'll see people walk and they do this, right? Hold on. They do this. The dog starts forging ahead a little bit, and before they even hit the end of the leash, their arm does this.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? And they're literally walking like this. Right?
Yep.
So just breaking that habit alone, that is, if you use a flexi for nothing else, that's what I used it for initially. I didn't use it for anything else. I just used it when I started seeing people subconsciously doing that.
Yeah.
I put a flexi in their hand. I said, you can't do that anymore. Can't do it anymore.
Yeah, you can't do it back here. No.
Right? And it immediately fixed the problem.
Wow. Okay.
Immediately fixed the problem with all those people. And then you got to put a regular leash back in their hand, and you already broke the habit, so they're not doing it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
From there, I think it started transitioning to same thing, but a lot of people would do this because when they were correcting with the e-collar, they were way too low on the level.
Yeah.
So they needed to rely on the leash as the backup.
Yeah.
So when you had that flexi in your hand and you couldn't do that anymore, you started realizing, shit, this e-collar correction just isn't working. The dog's all the way over there. They're not coming back.
Yeah.
So then it forced people to start finding better levels on their e-collar, more effective levels on their e-collar to get the dog to just listen to them and understand the consequences.
Yeah.
Right? Then it started transitioning to, again, like helping people move towards off-leash training with their dog. right? Then it started transitioning to using it to actually, what the Flexi probably was invented for initially, give the dog freedom out on walks, but not have this like long, jumbled up long line that they were constantly tripping over.
Yeah.
Because there are some dogs, like, there are some owners and there are some dogs that you could put a long line in their hand, and it's like the owner gets so distracted by the dog stepping over the long line, they constantly want to adjust it under their feet, right? The dog gets constantly distracted by tripping over the long line, right? Where the Flexi fixes that problem. It's not dragging on the ground for them to be stepping over constantly.
Yeah.
Right? So I started transitioning to using it for that. And now I just use it all the time.
Yeah. No, when you explain it all like that, especially like the lineup that you said, like the gradual, like where you put it there, like after they kind of figure out where you're supposed to have everything with like a dog on a leash and everything, having the Flexi is just like a good natural progression to like, okay, you can give them a little more freedom now that they kind of understand what you're wanting from them.
And if you really if we were to get even a little bit deeper into this here, like what the Flexi helps with is it helps people to just trust their dog more and trust their own training more. Like an alternative to the Flexi could be like if trainers had access to like a really large fenced in area, right? Where they could do their training just off leash with the dog, right? Like, I think that would help a lot too. I think so many trainers get too stuck on the fucking leash.
Yeah.
And owners get too stuck on the leash, and it just creates a ton of problems. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you're only ever training the dog on a 6-foot leash, you've never put yourself or your dog in a position where you're telling them like, hey, I trust you right now to take this thing off. And not that I think dogs like are so deep where they're like, oh, wow, you don't trust me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if the dog is never given the freedom truly to make decisions and not have these barriers on them, then at that point, you're limited with your training.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason why, like, we used to do sessions with people. I'll always remember there's a very impactful moment you'll hit with all of your dogs that you're working with, which is when you first do off leash for the first time. And not just do off leash obedience training, but you give the dog that ability where you say, you're off leash, go do whatever you want to do. Right? Yeah. There's this moment that you'll see for some of them. For some of them, they're just like, oh yeah, cool, I hang out, I sniff on things, this, that, right? Life is good. There's other ones that are like, as soon as they get that taste the very first time, they're like, right? They just start ripping. I've talked before about like all these dogs where it's like, we let them off leash the first time, they just start absolutely fucking tearing around because it's the first time in their life they've ever been able to do that. Yeah. Right? And if you're only ever doing all your obedience training on either a 20-foot line or on a 6-foot leash, you never hit that point where you've seen the dog open up like that and realize that for the first time they have total freedom, but they still listen to you through it. Yeah. Right? And the only way you could ever train for that is if you have a large enough fenced-in area, right? You intentionally work your training exercises where you're giving the dog a lot of freedom to make more committed mistakes and decisions, obviously. Or you work through things in that incremental process like I talked about of like, shorter leash, flexi lead, long line being dragged, then off leash altogether, where you kind of little by little say, you got a little more freedom right now. You got a little more freedom right now. You got a little more freedom right now, so they could hit that point. And you could see them in that context and make sure that they still listen to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys do a lot of off-leash stuff with Bender?
Yeah.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
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 When's the first time you ever let him off-leash that you remember? Like, can you remember a time when you were like, all right, this is your chance?
Yeah, I would say so. There's a trail right by us that has like a huge field right before you get into the trailhead, Yeah. And that was probably, he was probably what, maybe 10 months, 11 months old. And we just let him tear. Yeah. Yeah. He went crazy.
And how did you know that was the time, right? 10, 11 months. Like, now's the time I feel comfortable fully taking this leash off and saying, do your thing.
Yeah. Devin was working with him. And, he was really good with his heel and his leash. How you act on the leash was very mindful of like being with us.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, like being aware. Like we never really like did the okay, you got to stay like right there, but it was always like, hey, just keep your mind on me, kind of thing. And he finally kind of proved it that okay, it'd be all right. And we had to. I mean, she e-collar trained him like immediately, like as a puppy. So
I still don't know how people just like I know how they do it, right? But like, I don't know how people can just like have the trust to do it without an e-collar.
Oh,
it still blows my mind. I remember the very first time I let Vera off leash.
Yeah.
I was going through training with her, with a local trainer.
Yeah.
And it was very much like what I'm talking about. Like all of the training was centered around short leash, pinch collar, right? Mm-hmm. I'm doing training with her, and she did great. Like, she was such a good dog to learn with because, like, she was very compliant. She took to the training very well. Mm-hmm. So I would go to the park. I would do downstays. I would do healing. Like, I would go out every fucking day training this dog, right? Just, like, I really enjoyed it, right? And I remember the trainer said, like, was like, oh, yeah, like, I'm working off-leash training with my dog right now. And, yeah, you just got to kind of start, transitioning to just not holding the leash and then taking it off and this and that. And like, I remember I was like, all right, well, like she listens to me so well on a leash. Like I'm going to take her off leash right now. And I took her off leash and we're at the same park we trained at every single day. And there were some kids playing basketball in the basketball courts. Right. Mm-hmm. And I remember I took her off leash. I did like 2 or 3 downstays. She was doing all right with it. And then she just turned around and just fucking sprinted towards the people playing basketball. And went over there and I was like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And then I remember after that, I didn't do any more off-leash stuff with her. Went through all this other training, right? I worked with a couple different trainers in the area. I started working at Heights, right? And at this point, we didn't really do a lot with e-collars. It was like leash and prong still and food stuff, right? Yeah. So they were a little bit more reliable with the food, but like I still had these, like I was like, I don't know if I fully trust her off leash. And I lived in Tremont at the time. And I remember we just started kind of getting into e-collars. We're like, yeah, we're going to start using these. And they basically convinced me that like, oh, e-collar training is easy. You just like put the e-collar on and you do like a session of, pressure and release with healing. And I think I took her out and just like anytime I'd pull on the leash, I was like pressure, 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 pressure. And then I went to the park and I just like let her off leash and, she did fine. Right. And I think it was just for me, all the groundwork that I put in with the training, same deal. Like you said, she was so like mindful and respectful around distractions. Yeah. But now I felt like I had this extra security of like, if she tries to take off after something, I could stop her from doing it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it just like was like, oh, well, this is the time. And then I started taking her there and playing ball with her every day. And it went really well for a while. And then I ran into the one situation. I remember I was off leash on a hiking trail with her and we're walking and I had her e-collar on, obviously. And she'd been great. It's been months since we started the e-collar training, never took off after anything. And suddenly we're in the woods and like 20 feet away from us, there was like a buck.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh God.
Same deal. It's just like a fucking rocket she took off. I didn't even see her. And I remember just being like, right? And I heard, and then she came fucking flying back to me. Yeah. And that was probably the only time I ever needed to do that. And then she never took off after anything, like basically ever again. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sure there was another moment where I needed to correct her for trying to. But like there was no concern after that. It was like, all right, she tried it. She realized it didn't work. Yep. And we're past this. Yeah. And this is what we tell our clients all the time is like, you almost want to... Michelle had a really good video one time that got a lot of traction online that was like, we don't trust dogs off leash. Like you have to let them off leash, but I won't trust my dog off leash fully until I've had that one situation where they say, nope, don't want to come back, or particularly I want to try to go after that thing, and you're able to correct it big, hard and heavy right there and then, and set that tone. And then from that point on, you're going to be like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Right? And the dog will be like, I can't do that.
I can't do that.
I remember Vinny had that moment. Vinny's a dog where, because I got him when he was young and all of his training was like engagement work in fields, like I trusted him off leash pretty early on, but at this stage in the game, I was much more experienced with my training and I knew e-collar training was very beneficial. And same deal, I still lived in Tremont. I was at Lincoln Park playing ball with him. And I think he tried to take off after a squirrel, and same deal, big correction right there and then. That was probably the only time I ever ran into that. Yeah. I mean, it's like each one of my dogs probably had a moment like that, I
Yeah.
would say, you know?
Even Waffles?
Waffles was weird because he was never distracted by things,
Yeah.
but like Waffles had like almost the opposite issue, which is like he would get like really nervous about stuff, right? He had like a lot of genetic fear issues. And I remember the one day, Kate talks about it all the time, just started kind of training him, did e-collar training and stuff. And I first started off by doing the off-leash, like we had moved, obviously we're here and we have almost an acre, right? So, and most of it's fenced in too. So like we were able to train most of our recall training and get past a lot of that with him just in our yard.
Yeah.
And I remember one time he was in the yard and he didn't want to come back in, or he got like weird about something and wouldn't come back in. And I was able to go in the backyard and just correct him, right? I had to correct him like 2 or 3 times because he did the kind of like, oh, I'm going to shut down in the corner because I'm nervous, right? And then finally he realized the e-collar pressure only turns off when I go to dad, right? And that was the only time we ever had a problem with that. Then at that point,
Boom.
And that was his thing. And then we were able to just let him off leash after that.
Yeah.
And there was 0 problems with it.
I love that.
So that was kind of his moment, right? His was less, I'm distracted by stuff, and his was more, he really needed to understand. I needed to find a situation where he would get into that like shutdown state of mind, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of your fearful dogs will see. And I needed him to realize you escape pressure by coming to me. I am the ultimate safe spot,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that's how I got the reliability with him with that.
Nice.
So,
Little Waffles.
yeah. But yeah, Flexi leads, cool tool.
Yeah.
I like them a lot. I really like them. I talk about them all the time. I have clients use them all the time. You know what's even funny now? I tell clients all the time, "Oh, go buy a Flexi lead. Go buy this." I've even gotten so far where I like push them on my clients.
Yeah.
Where not just as like a training tool in the moment. I was like, this would just be a great tool for you to have. Like 2 clients in particular, I've talked about a lot: Riggs and Nala. Right, 2 dogs, very reactive, medicated. Right, all these issues. One of them in particular, Nala, she lives in an apartment, right? And she's a German Shepherd. She doesn't have any outlet for her energy. So, like, a lot of it was, get a Flexi. So, one, we could help tighten up these reactivity issues per everything we talked about, right? It'll be easier for you to work on. It'll help you have better timing with your e-collar, et cetera, et cetera. But 2, like, you live in the city. Like, it'll give you the ability to at least kind of start giving the dog some freedoms. But still have the safety of being able to keep the dog under control if you need to. Right?
Yeah.
Riggs was the same way. Riggs, we were able to transition very quickly to off leash, which now we've transitioned to that at this point. Yeah, I mean, it's been something I've really pushed on them. Riggs, this dog was on so much fucking medication.
Really?
It was insane. We actually just got a review from them. Yeah, let me.
Oh yeah. There we go. That's a good.
Yeah.
That's a good outro there. And also Flexi, if you're listening, we'll take sponsorship requests.
Yeah, let us know. There we go. 5 stars isn't enough. We had been told by vets that our boy had severe anxiety. He was pretty much chalked up to keeping him on meds his entire life. His last vet visit went so bad that we were told they couldn't do much for him anymore. My partner had been keeping up with Miracle Canine for quite a while, so we both sat down one night and discussed the possibility of sending him. Every dog owner knows how hard it is to entrust somebody with your dog for an entire month. Not only that, but how hard it is to be without your dog for an entire month. We read the reviews and couldn't find a single bad one. We thought, what if this doesn't work? But our dog's quality of life was top priority, and we made the tough decision to send him to Miracle Canine. Best decision ever. To say our lives have completely changed is an understatement. We knew once we picked Riggs up, our training would begin. Everything we never thought was possible became possible. Playing with other dogs was something we never thought he would be able to do. To see him socialized and free has been anything short of a miracle. He loves playtime now, walking Riggs in the past around a lot of other people, dogs or bikes, etc. Our worst nightmare. Now it's a beautiful dream turned to reality. Being able to take him with us places and not dreading it is exhilarating. Most of all, seeing our boy get to be a happy, playful, unmedicated dog has been absolutely life-changing. And although it's only been a few weeks since he has been home and we are still learning, it's been a beautiful journey thus far. David has been wonderful keeping up with our training sessions and answering our questions as we transition and learn how to continue to do what's best for our boy. We will forever be grateful for everyone who works here. Even though he was in training, Riggs had a great time and he looks forward to going back for his sessions every time. Now we have no worries boarding him. We go on weekend trips because we know he will get the best care and his training will always be kept up with. Most importantly, he will have the best time with all the friends he made there. Look out, daycare workers. Rig's coming. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Miracle Canine, you all have changed our lives. Change Rig's life. And look at this. The picture they use with the Flexi Giant. Hey, you see that right there? Hey. Oh, let's go.
That's awesome.
So super cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll tell you guys, like the Flexi was such an important tool with that dog to be able to like allow him to just be a bit of a dog as we were working towards off-leash training.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So listen, today I kind of rambled a bit about Flexis. I think I kind of near the end put it together and compiled like really these are some reasons why it's very beneficial.
You did.
But if you're an owner, don't take this as a like, oh, my dog's untrained, let me just get a Flexi and it'll fucking fix all my problems, because that's absolutely not what I'm saying, right? That will get you in the trap of like what we used to hate on Flexi so much for, which is, again, not a problem with the Flexi, but like it's people just like giving an untrained dog more freedoms and still having an untrained dog.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Giving an untrained dog more freedom to do stupid shit, right?
Yeah.
So like let's avoid that, obviously. But if you have a trained dog and you feel like some of the things I said resonate with you as far as how you nag your walking positioning, or you feel like your e-collar timing isn't as good as it could be, or you feel like all those things are good, but you want to give the dog more freedom in a controlled way or start transitioning to off-leash training, it might be worth picking one up. Yeah. If you're a trainer that's still shitting on Flexis, you got to just get over it, dude.
Yeah, give it a try.
You got to just get over it, just like I did, right? Yeah. I get it. I was there. But you got to just get over it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I got.
Yep. Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, like you just said, I think it's the people that have the untrained dogs that use it unwisely have given it such a bad rap. Yeah. And that it's hard to look at the great benefits that it has. Yep. So
it's just a tool in the toolbox now.
Yeah. That's what that was the other thing I was going to say to wrap up was, it's cool to see that, at the end of the day, whatever the tool is that you're using, a leash or a Flexi or whatever, as long as you, the trainer, know what you're doing.
It's true.
You can use anything to your advantage.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So that's it. Use your Flexis.
Use your Flexis.
And we'll catch you guys on the next one.
See ya.